Mike Barrett, Mike Tatlock here with you on Vertical Pursuit. Thanks for spending time with us. You probably have found us on Spotify or iTunes or the Vertical Pursuit app. Look around that app, by the way, if that's one of the ways you found the podcast. It's got a lot of good stuff in it, including your book, as you are an author, best-selling author.
Don't know about that.
Well, I want to hear more about. One of these days, you'll be able to talk more about maybe some upcoming projects.
Yep, there's
in this
there's
department.
That. Yeah.
It's a little chilly in the Vertical Pursuit posh studios today, but you have the heater on, so that's nice. It's a chilly time of year. You know, speaking of that time of year, and I'll transition this into the topic for today's episode. But I was talking to my son, I think it was this morning, and he's a senior, and he was frustrated and was talking about COVID did a number on him like it did on a lot of kids, whereas he kind of went from just the Mr. Social and active and everything else, and it shut him into their rooms kind of and isolated them, and a lot of those kids never came back from that. He's kind of one of them. He's doing great, don't get me wrong, but he's frustrated because he got inactive, and then he's like, I'm not in great shape. I need to go do something. You know, he can't get going again following COVID, which is strange, and which is, you know, like I said in the last episode, if I start talking about it, my blood will start to boil about what they did to kids in this BS. But anyway, I won't go there too hard. I want to, but then I was talking to him, and I wrote him a note this morning, which I do. We kind of communicate that way sometimes. He'll go off to school, and I'll write him a note. My dad used to do that with me, and I think is probably why I do it. But I was talking about, in terms of a part-time job and then what next year, and he's just at that stage where he's not sure what he wants to be. And so I just said, you don't have to hurry that right now. But I said, in terms of getting going or getting up and finding your way, I said, you do know, and we've talked about this, you know about New Year's resolutions. And he's like, yeah. So I wrote that in a note, and I just said, I've never been a big New Year's resolution guy. I said, but if that could be something that maybe could help you as a starting point or a line in the sand where it helps you with discipline, it helps you get determined. And at the same time, I said, you know, the question always is, well, does that work for you? No, but I'll give you that advice, but no, it doesn't, because what happens is, and I think you see this, especially like I hear people I've had friends who've worked like at health clubs or athletic clubs, and January's it's going crazy.
Yeah.
Then, middle of the month is, maybe I don't have time today, or I had a better offer, I had something better to do. And so comes the drift from the New Year's resolution and start to fade away. And I was thinking about so many things in our lives that are exactly like this, especially, and I think a lot of people who have a walk with faith have this happen. And that's where you guys push so much at Grace Chapel, the church where you are the pastor of, and even with friends, you talk about cohort groups and small group Bible study groups and couples groups and men's groups. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the main reasons for having those, the easiest word is accountability. But what accountability does, as it relates to what I was just talking about, is when you talk about a New Year's resolution or whatever, the accountability that would come with that, which would hopefully prevent the drift that always happens. But is that one of the reasons that you guys, I mean, accountability is the biggest thing, or fellowship, we always talk about, but isn't one of the reasons for fellowship accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't like that word, but it's it can be a bad word. Accountability, what does that mean? The word account in there, give an account, and so you feel like, am I getting audited? Spiritually, relationally audited. So, but I'll say this, and I know this is where you're leading us. You use the word drift, but how many times have we seen someone in public figure that we put on a pedestal, and it could be a leader of our organization, a corporation, a business, a church, an athlete, you name it, and you wake up one day in the headlines and you just see disaster, scandal, and it shocks you. There's some people that doesn't surprise me. You're like, I kind of figured that. Then you see the ones that you go, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
what happened?
What happened? How could that have happened?
How could that have happened? No way. Almost unbelievable. And then you almost inside feel betrayed. Even though you followed them from a distance. We followed them from afar. We read their books. We adapted some of their values, and we were inspired by them. And these people that influenced us for good, comes out that seems like they're a monster, or at maybe a minimum, they're just someone that was living a double life. And you go, wait, like, what happened? Did they start this way? How did they end up there? And they always say that no one ends up like that overnight. It's a drift. But when you say accountability, it's not a policing, auditing sort of like, hey, what are you doing? Like, I consider you and Jim and I, we meet on a regular basis. We've talked about this, and we'll sit down and just get really raw and honest. That's a cohort. That's what one of these things we're talking about. Man,
being known, as we've talked about.
Being known. And that's what I think happens with people who drift. They're not known anymore. They're living a life of secrecy, and you can only maintain that for so long. And the question was, where were you known fully? Not compartmentalized life where I'm living this way here, and that part, everybody celebrates me, and I'll let you see that. Then I got this double life that is private and destructive, and it catches up to you, and people go, wait, we didn't see that coming. Where were the people in your life that could have spoke into your life and helped you, kept you from self-sabotaging? And where were those voices? And we all know that we can live very isolated, and you can have the illusion of, and especially outgoing people are really good at letting you think they're known, but they're not. And then, that's how that plays out. So the idea of accountability to me is, who do you have? Who's your circle? Who's your circle of confidence that you can be fully known and transparent, authentic, vulnerable, raw, all those things. And it's like a pressure valve that if you don't have that release of authenticity, and it builds up, and so you need that place for that. And that's what those communities help with that.
And that's, as we've talked about a lot, you're the team chaplain for the Portland Trail Blazers, and you've done it long enough where now you know a lot of guys who you were close with, and they know that they were known by you, and they're no longer with the team. And the Damian Lillard trade was a really big moment over the summer when he got dealt to Milwaukee, and I'm still in contact lightly with him, and we texted a little bit during that. The biggest concern I had for him, and I'll relate this to what we're talking about, is he goes to, and this is a pitfall for not just professional athletes, but for anybody, I think, who spends a lot of time traveling or going to new areas. You go to areas where you're not known. Therefore, do you have that support group there of accountability? And that was my worry for him. Not that he's not a great guy, but that was always my worry when I got to know players as well, and they would get traded to a new area. And I'm like, now that rock solid core of brothers and his cohort, he's got to go build a new one. So my check-in with them is always, who you spending time with?
Yeah.
Are you taking what you learned here or were comforted by here to your new home? And I know from traveling with the Blazers for 17 years in my role, I spent a lot of nights in hotel rooms, and I'm never going to do that again. And it was a great, great thing. And I didn't have any huge falls during that, but guys around me did. And part of that was, as you talked about, being known by your cohort or by your group. All of a sudden you're in a hotel room alone, and you have, especially if you're a player, you have the means to live a double life, or to live a secret life, or to have your morality compromised greatly because of your access and your ability. So and pro athletes always get the, maybe rightly so, kind of the stereotype as you go on the road and there's women and there's groupies and there's all this stuff, just like we always talked about with rock bands and anybody else who spends time isolated. Yes, you're traveling as a team, but trust me, there's a lot of time you're isolated.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. And sitting there and you start to, you see how it happens. So in dealing with those guys, as you do and did, a lot of those guys that are still in the league, is that something that you concentrated on at all with them? And did you take measures to follow up with them to see what their cohort is like now so that they don't start what can be a really damaging drift away from their own beliefs and their own morality?
Yeah. Well, you know that world. You lived in it. You were in it. You were immersed in it, more than I ever was or am. And everything.
Groupies don't normally follow TV broadcasters, though. I didn't have that part.
But you had a front row seat to
I had a front
that
row
world,
seat.
that's for sure.
Yeah, I did.
What's crazy is just to talk about that, why this is so important, because I remember years ago when I first started doing it, you were there. We did it together, and you even came to chapels together.
Yeah,
and that was fun.
I was fortunate to be able to be a part of those.
Absolutely. Those were fun days. And I remember the first time I talked with a guy. It was my first year as a chaplain, and it's not my first year as being a pastor since I was 21. You hear stuff. People, they treat you sometimes like a priest, and they tell you things, and it's like, well, first of all, let me just say this: God welcomes everybody to go straight to Him, and at the same time, there is something about having someone that you can share to, confess to, for help. And so, over 20-some years, you begin to hear everything that people wrestle with. And so, I would like to say,
your tell-all book is coming out soon.
Yeah, that is, and I've got names in there and stories. It's going to be great. This one's, I'm going out with a flame on this one.
Right.
This is going to
I mentioned best-selling author.
Yeah.
This is going to be your biggest one.
This is it, and the last one after that.
Right, exactly. Because you're going to have to run.
You'll be like in hiding the world after you. But I remember talking to a guy in the locker room, and he said, I was asking him hey, is it really that hard? As a professional athlete, when it comes to temptation, what's that look like? And he said, here's how it works. And especially these days with social media, I mean, somebody follows you and they can DM you and that's it. And he's like, we can get a message, it come from anywhere, any source, but you're more accessible through technology. And so we can get a message with every game with two women or three women, whatever it takes. We're at your hotel waiting for you.
Mm-hmm. I have a few stories about
I bet
seeing some things like that.
Yeah.
And even having, I had one player years ago. His mother used to come to games at home and on the road, and we would always put her on TV. We did that with a lot of the moms that we got to know, family. Yeah. We always tried to make our broadcast a little different with that. And so we were on the road, and I saw his mother, and I went and gave her a hug, and so of course the natural, I'm telling the truck, hey, so and so's mom is here, we got to put her on, and so we're on the court, for rehearsal, and so we don't go live until right at the top of the hour, and so the team is out doing layup lines, and he comes over to me, and he knows that we always put his mom on TV, and he said, hey, don't put moms on tonight. And I said, oh, okay, you don't want me to put her on camera? He goes, nope. And I said, oh, will she be sitting with someone? And he goes, yep. And I said, okay, always let me know. I'll try to take care of you. Yep. I want to keep a good relationship. Yep. But it's funny that, and there's not a lot of that happen, but once in a while those things happen. But as it relates to what we're talking about, it's that, and I think, and I didn't plan to bring up the cohort accountability thing, but it kind of hit me as we started talking. Yeah. That goes with, if you want to talk about how to avoid a drift, and that means a drift away from really anything, because I started this off talking about New Year's resolutions as it relates to health or lifestyle or budget or all these things that we battle. Well, accountability and having people in your life, which I think is the entire reason we started this podcast in the first place, is to try to give guys the idea that we all struggle with the same stuff and it's okay. So you don't want to hide in shame, live in shame, which is what we try to endorse. But I think all that stuff is related, including the stuff we're talking about now, which I didn't think we'd get into, but that's how this thing always works. We end up going in ways bring up things we didn't know, but I do feel like they're all for a reason. And I think that idea of the accountability and the friendship and the cohort and the being known helps, again, avoid that drift.
It does. And that's why bringing that back up with you don't have to be a professional athlete. And the reason I brought that up was because I think that every day we all face choices, every single one of us. And we don't have 2 or 3 women waiting in our hotel every night, wearing our stamina down with our, oh no, I'm
which
good.
Contributes to the drift.
It does. And you're like, okay, like some of the drift is you get worn down. Mm-hmm. I'm doing so good. And you could apply that to anything. Like I'm doing really good. I'm staying true to my values. I'm staying true to what I believe. And then, but when temptation comes,
that's it.
It can wear you down. And that's why back to the cohorts, the word cohort is a military word. And we use them for women. Oftentimes people think a military word like, oh, it's like, actually the Bible all over the place uses battle language for men and women because it is a fight every single day. It's a battle for your sanity. It's a battle for your mental health. It's a battle for your relationships, your values, you name it. If it's important to you, it's going to be a battle. And just last week, it was Thanksgiving. We had a Blazer game. We did a chapel, and then, of course, it was the game before Thanksgiving. And so the theme was on gratitude and thankfulness. And I just started by saying, hey, let's just go around the room in the locker room. What are you guys grateful for? And one of the guys said, man, I'm so grateful for my support system, my support network. He said, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without them. And I just went, you know what? That's what we're talking about. And I also said this too, is that everything that's important for you, Satan's going to try to steal it from you. So there's so many ways we get worn down, and it's a battle every single day to hold on to all the things that are important. And so the word cohort is the idea. It's a military word. It means going into battle with someone on your left, someone on your right, someone's got your back. And so if not, we can be victims of our own self-sabotage. But when you got people in your life that know you, trust you, for you, that you can be completely honest. Now, here's the catch in all this. How do you find that? That's what I have. Yeah, that's what people ask me all the time. Like, Mike, great, you got that. Good for you. How did you get that? And that's a whole nother thing we can talk about. But at the core of that is the word trust. Who do you have that you can trust your life with? That when you're wrestling something and you're honest and you're feeling, man, I don't know if I can keep it up anymore. I'm starting to slip in the decisions I'm making, or I'm having thoughts that, I'm getting overwhelmed, whatever that is, that you can have people that you trust and that they can say, hey, let me encourage you. Let me challenge you. Let me, if I need to walk with you, if I need to show up with you and be there while you're struggling, like whatever it takes, the cohort, the group of people in that circle keep you from drifting.
And it's funny because we were going to do one recently, and probably still will do an episode on being stuck. And the more I started thinking about this today, prior to the episode starting, the more I started to equate the drift with being stuck. And I know they sound like opposites, especially as it relates to, one of the easiest illustrations is like a boat. A boat comes loose, and you've used this in a sermon when you were at a boat ramp and a boat came loose and started to float down the river and you jumped into it. But anyway, that I always was thinking of that. So that kind of sounds like the opposite of being stuck. But I think the way that I tie those together and the way it kind of came into my mind is because I think drifting often happens through inaction, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And maybe not recognizing our position not only in the negative, but in the positive. And I think if we can respond with action as the drift starts, rather than inaction and being stuck, that can be something that can help us.
Yeah, absolutely. What does that look like for you? When you say, I love that, because when you just said that, I went, oh yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. So develop that for everybody that's listening. What does that look like in your life?
I'm not very good at it. I recognize it, which I think is a big first step, but I think you would agree with this, but the way that I get recentered and the way my tank gets refilled, not that it doesn't happen with my family, my wife and kids, because they're awesome. That's where the cohort is different, and where it comes in is I'll go out with you and Jim and sit by the fire for 2.5, 3 hours when the world's in bed for the most part, because we usually do it late at night. Right. And that tends to speak into me. It affirms me, but it also, we speak about accountability because we know so much and we can be so known and not rejected. And I think the biggest fear for a lot of men is, and we talked a little about this, I think, in one of our previous episodes recently, but the biggest fear of men is to be known and then be rejected. Yeah. And so therefore, I'm just not going to be known. Yeah. I'm going to live secretly. But you talk about a recipe for a drift and for inaction. Yeah. That's it.
Absolutely.
But and that's a very simple response to your question as far as what helps me with that. Would you agree with that in your life in terms of
absolutely
in terms of avoiding any kind of secrecy that then can be used by the enemy to tempt and rip you away from the things and the path you should be on?
Absolutely. Well, that's why the battle rages inside each of us, which when you talk about a drift, if you think of something drifting, there's a current, right? So if you throw a stick in the water, you see it drifting down. There's a current. So there's something there's an active moving force that causes the drift to happen. Sometimes we ourselves are the active moving force. And that can come from a place of entitlement, a place of trauma, a place of fear. It can be self-induced, where I am in of myself the driving force that caused the current. But then we have to realize, like, the Bible speaks to this enemy, Satan, the devil, that is a deceiver, a liar. And what he does, and he's a master at it, is he looks at our areas of vulnerability, our areas where there's the chink in our armor, and he just zeroes in on that. So, for instance, if I'm a person that's dealt with some rejection in my life, I grew up in a home and have a father wound, I had an abusive, abandoned father, or, grew up with a massive amount of shame because of decisions I made, that's a vulnerability. And if I'm not aware of that vulnerability, then the enemy knows it, and he's going to zero right in on that. And that's where the form of temptation comes. So now that's a stream or current that causes the drift that's outside of me. So I can be one on the inside, but the outside force of drift momentum can come from lies from the enemy. Because most people I talk to that slow drift, there's a compromise. It's one compromise, one justification, one more compromise, one more justification. And it's so subtle. And it's just one, the next one. I'll justify this. It's just a sip. It's just one, and not only that, not only is there a justification.
You just said a big one with the sip, and I'm sure that people who've struggled with that can really identify with the drift.
Totally. And that's what we do. We tell ourselves, and I'm in control of this. We're not. No, we're not. We're not. We're actually not really good self-managing people. And this is where we need others to help us. And ultimately, we can end the podcast with this too, but ultimately this is where
we're not into nothing. We're only like 25 minutes in.
Yeah, exactly. We got 4 more hours on this one. We're pulling out a Rogan podcast.
I got more to say.
What's his longest podcast?
I don't know. It's like 4 hours.
Yeah. But there's a spiritual thing too that gives us, I always say it this way, if anybody can relate to this. You've ever driven down the road and you see a semi truck, and you see there's a line of semi trucks, And you go, yeah, why is that? Well, it's because it's the slow lane. They're in gears and all that. It's like, no, that's not actually why they're all in the same lane. Oh, that's part of it. Yes. The reason the semi trucks are lined up is because they're drafting.
Mm-hmm. It's a convoy, baby.
It's a convoy. And they know that when you are, it's slipstreaming is the technique, when you're behind one, the one in front of you is taking all the resistance, which allows the wind.
You get better mileage.
You get better gas mileage. They know this. It's economic. So it makes sense to trail behind somebody. That's called drafting. In sports, you see it with drafting in race cars, cyclists, any sport where there's resistance of wind.
That's a good point.
If you can hide behind someone, it's less work, less effort, you get more mileage. And so I think the solution to drifting is being better at drafting.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah, like that. You like how that came? That didn't just come to me, but that's. I wish I could say that just came to me, and that didn't. I probably read that somewhere a long time ago.
That's all right.
But it is like, so drafting happens in two ways. One, who takes the ultimate resistance is Jesus. Jesus walked ahead of us so we could follow behind him, and that wasn't just so I could try to mimic him and feel like a failure at it, which is what a lot of us do. Is all right. If I wake up every day going, shoot, I'm supposed to follow him. I suck at that. He said, follow me, not because you can always miss the mark and feel guilty and shame about it. He said, because I want you to draft behind me. What does that mean? Well, even Jesus depended on the power of God's Spirit to help him through really hard things. And so when we follow Jesus, what that means is it's faith. It's trusting God. Give me the power to overcome. But it also means drafting in your circle of relationships. Like when we meet, you and Jim and I, and we sit around the fire, we're drafting right there. Mm-hmm. Because I don't have to take all the resistance by myself. Mm-hmm. This is where loneliness and isolation is a significant part of the drift. And that's why people keep their lives in secret and compartmentalize, and they're not known. And when you are with a group of guys or women that you are completely vulnerable and real with, and there's a place to say, guys, I'm struggling with this. Or to have you said accountability, to look at you and go, bro, you're justifying. Bro, you're slipping, just so you know. Like, and because we don't know it. We've been self-deceived into like, oh, it's one little compromise. It's not that big a deal. It's one little sip. It's one little this. And you need someone next to you to go, hey, I just, man, don't compromise. Don't compromise. Don't do that. Don't, if there's anything I'm doing, you've got the truth coming into your life from someone else. And in that moment, in that conversation, what's happening is you're now drafting because you've got others that are there to help you against that resistance.
And that fight to catch our drift before we've gone too far.
Yeah, that's the key right there. Ooh, that's the key, because it's sort of like, okay, there is moments where you go, okay, compromise. Ooh, compromise. And so, one of the things, I did this with our guys on our staff I straight up did this about 7 years ago. I got all of our men together on our staff at our church, got them in a room, and I asked them this question. I said, do you guys know yourself well enough that if it came to you breaking your vows and having an affair with your wife, what would be your trigger?
Yeah.
Do you know it? Like, are you self-aware enough to know that my vulnerability is, it's a woman who would, for instance, would your trigger be that you have such low self-esteem, you feel so horrible about yourself, that the trigger for you to compromise your values would be flattery?
Absolutely. I think that would be the case with, and that's where, for a lot of reasons, we were just talking about athletes a minute ago, you would think that they get the most affirmation, the most flattery, and are the most secure. But I think the flattery, along with the loneliness of being on the road and being that, the escape from the fear of not having the flattery, or not being enough, not having what it takes, is the reason that causes a lot of those drifts and ultimate falls.
Absolutely. And we all know that because inside, part of our vulnerability is our insecurities.
Yep.
And so, and this is why, and I've said this, you've said this, I think we've talked about it on this podcast, that our wives, and it's not their fault. I'll never say that it's a wife's or spouse's fault for someone's infidelity or anything like that. You can't say that. However, However, I will say that when a spouse understands the power they have to build up or tear down, the weight of those words carries more than we realize. And so if you're in a toxic relationship at home, man or woman, and you're just being torn down, again, doesn't justify that. It explains why we're vulnerable to someone else who comes along and just builds us up. Before you know it, you're like, all right, I'm in.
Right.
And you justify the little texts, you justify the little this and that, and then before you know it, you wake up one day and you're like, oh man, how did I end up here?
It's funny you say that, because I know a guy, I don't know him anymore, but back in my NBA days, I knew a guy who was in the midst of doing that. And I finally asked one time, I said something about, how can you your wife and kids are at home. And he goes, well, and it was one other particular, it wasn't a bunch of ladies, it was one. And he goes, it's just fun. And she doesn't nag me, and she respects me, and we just have a good time. And I want to say to him, I didn't, but it's just not real. This is a Band-Aid on a wounded psyche.
Yeah.
And you're, and I didn't know him well enough to really, like you have to really know somebody well to call somebody totally out.
Yeah.
So I was more just kind of interested. But that, in the cases that I have known, and I haven't known of many, thankfully, but of the ones that I have kind of had a ringside seat to, those have been the things they say. Yeah. So that adds to what you were just talking about. No. But it goes both ways too.
Totally.
Husbands, you're not innocent in this.
No. And I'll just,
in terms of building up your wife.
Absolutely. It's the same thing. And that's why they say, most women are caught into some emotional affair before anything gets physical, because they have, it's the same thing, and vice versa. But, as a real example, how I've seen it in my life, just to add some transparency to this conversation, is, when Bern and I got married, and, we were young kids, she was 20, and I was 20, we got married, and, man, we did a lot of adventures together. It was so fun dating and married. Like, you're just running around doing life together, having fun. You're young. And I mean, we had crazy adventures. I mean, I remember we were dating one time, and I'm like, oh, let's go for a walk out in the country. And we were walking along a railroad track. And I thought, we're going to walk on this railroad track and just go. And just, it's those romantic days, long walks. It was out in the country. Had some country music probably going through my head, going, you and I talked.
You're the man.
Yeah, exactly. This is like out in a wheat field nearby, and all of a sudden a train shows up. This train shows up, like literally a train comes by, and so we get off the railroad track, obviously, so they could go by, but they stopped. I mean, what are the odds? When does this ever happen? Like an actual train stops. It was like a freight train, and the conductor goes, "Hey, you guys want to go for a ride?"
It's a Polar Express.
Yeah, it was the Polar Express.
All aboard.
This is the other book that's coming out.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna do a movie on it.
You got on the train?
We got on the train. Got on the train. And here's the crazy thing is, it was a whim. It was adventure. It was fun, and we jump on the train. We're in the engine, and takes off, and then we had to figure out how to get back. But you don't think about those things. You're in the moment, spontaneous. Anyways, my point in saying that is that was a big part of our marriage. Well, and then we've been married, for so many years with her physical health.
Yeah.
That has really made it hard for us to live the adventurous life. And we're older now, and we've had kids, and so that's part of it too. But there's been a lot of times when we want to do those things. And I have found myself, talking about the drift, I have found myself like on social media where I'll see a family or a married couple doing an adventure on a vacation somewhere, and I go, gosh, he's lucky.
Yeah.
He gets to go do, and it's not that I want anything with that woman, it's the idea.
Yeah.
But the idea is one little thing in your heart that can go, see, you feel entitled to this too.
Right.
This is what I'm trying to say, to be really honest with guys and women who are listening, is that you got to know how that stuff seeps into your heart and mind, and know like how the enemy will use your entitlement, your ego, your insecurities, your fears, any of those things. For a lot of us, when we feel our life is out of control, and we're trying to grasp control, what are the compromises you're making to try to just keep control of things? And control is an illusion, but we make a compromise thinking this will give me control. I can justify this will give me control. Or I'm coping and going through a hard life, going through a hard season. And so I deserve this. This will make me feel good. And it will numb the pain a little bit. And so it's worth doing. And then again, that little decision, which may not feel like it's a major catastrophe, but it was a coping decision to numb the pain, even temporarily, turns into an addiction, turns into, a lifestyle, and then turns into destruction. So, I mean, this is something we all deal with, which is why when you have people close to you, that's what helps, so you can share with each other, hey, I'm struggling with this. How many times have I sent a text to you, or you've sent a text, or Jim, and said, hey, struggling today, could you guys pray for this? And right away, we start praying for each other, and you can feel even that, again, now we're drafting, we're not drifting.
And one cool thing to add to that, one night, I love that you did this. I'd like to think I would do this, but I'm not as good at it as you are. But you sent a text at 9:00 at night one time on a weeknight and just said, I'm under attack. I need you guys to come over.
Yep.
And boom, we're here.
Yeah.
And then it was awesome. And that's, gosh, I want to think that I would do that. I think so, but I don't know. I love that you were able to do that, and I'm honored that you did that. But that's the kind of guys that are listening. That's the kind of relationship. That's the kind of humility that I would love to see you gain, is to have that, to say, and I've known other guys who I've heard that from we both knew of some guy, they used it a lot, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yep.
Pride gets in the way, to be sure. And with me, it certainly does, where I can handle this, but when you get to the point, that shows that you're healthy, in that you had a night when you were just under attack and said, I need you guys to come over and talk to me and pray with me. Yeah. And it wasn't long, but it was awesome. And it recentered you. And I think the best part, what you did at that moment, I talked about this a minute ago, but you broke the inaction of where you were. And I think when we restart after we've hit inaction, and I know, again, drifting and inaction, they sound different. They're not. I'm talking about a pattern. And when we restart with repentance, and I guess a little bit, not in your case that time, but with remorse a little bit and redirection. And sometimes it takes others to help you with that redirection.
Oh, totally.
That's where you need to be. And that's, I think, hopefully for you came out of that, not only feeling like you got prayed for with your brothers, but that you also had to feel good about yourself for asking for it. I hope.
Well, that's the thing that I think at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head, is it's hard for us to ask for that help. It's hard for us to read. Now, maybe some overdo that, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's always texting every 10 seconds of the day needing, prayer or something because they're just needy. And that's the extreme unhealthy side of that is, okay, this is drama queen and what's it going to be today? And they write a book and it's like, okay, that's the unhealthy extreme. But I think the honest truth is I have to get good, and I'm trying to be honest enough to say if there's a day here and there where it's like, okay, I'm really starting to spiral here. How do I stop that negative momentum that could lead to a drift? And I want to catch that. I want to catch that as fast as I can. That's the being active. And so I think as I'm listening right now to what you're saying, I think the first step to action and being active is humility. You said that. So, okay, I got to initiate. And maybe it starts by a text thread. Maybe it's not even a group officially, like we have. It's a text thread, and you reach out to 2 or 3 people and say, hey, could you pray for this? Pray for me. And that was that first action step.
And to turn it back spiritually a little bit, I think the good news in this, as you imagine, and the word drift, we all think of what that means to us, or very good illustrations. And I used the boat a minute ago. The good news is God hasn't moved. He hasn't drifted. And so he's still our Father, and you are forever forgiven, no matter what the drift has been or what it has resulted in. And the best story I can relate to that, if you are somebody who's in the Word, or if that's where you go at times like this, is the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
And for any father's son, and I lost my dad, so did you. I lost mine more recently. You lost yours years ago. And but that's an emotional story from a son who had drifted and had made really bad decisions and maybe didn't catch his drift before he thought it was too late, or he had gone too far. But as one of the great lines in Scripture, and this is in Luke, is while he was still a long way off, and he's correcting his drift now, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. So no matter how far he had drifted and moved off, he knew he could still come home.
That's good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because how many of us are caught in the drift? And maybe we haven't got to the full extreme of the drift that turns into a self-erupted life. But maybe we've gone just enough to think there's no way back for me. And then you start feeling, that's the other thing, you start feeling the shame of like, okay, there's preventive drift, and then there's I'm in it, and now I feel like I'm in it just enough, but too far that I can actually go tell people they're going to be disappointed with me, they're going to judge me, they're going to this and that. And the story of the prodigal son is such a great story that you've never drifted enough away that there's never a way back. And I think that's why we have to be, the accountability thing is not just, again, preventive, it's also restorative.
Right. And the thought in your head, the picture in your mind, the picture in my mind, as we talk about that, and we talk about that story in Luke, is God is at home and he is awaiting your return.
Yeah.
And he will run and meet you with open arms.
Totally.
And that's the beautiful part, no matter what. And you talked about shame, man, and that's what hits it on the head. And you can feel that with people who are in a drift. You can feel the shame, the guilt, and the remorse pile up to the point where it's almost like I can see where somebody in the middle of that, when they're getting toward the end, you get to a point where you go, I got nothing to lose now.
Yeah.
Because I feel so badly about myself for what and we're not just, and I've stretched this into a much bigger sin than the original drift I was talking about, which was drifting away from a health club after a New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
But but you can see the illustration, how it's accurate on both counts.
You could scale this.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean.
The scale is everything. It's not always just that extreme things. It's the little things that we value. I heard, it just comes to my mind now, probably one of the most crazy stories of how I saw a cohort, small group of guys help someone was years ago. We were at a men's retreat, and, it was a church thing, so a bunch of dudes went, and they had a group, there was like 6 of these guys in a small group, a cohort together, and one of the guys decided to come clean on something. And I was like, whoa. So there was a guy in that group that had been living a complete double life, and he traveled on the road a lot for business, and every city he went to, he would do a Craigslist hookup. And this dude went deep into hookup life. I mean, he would every city, so every year, whatever, as often as he traveled, he would go straight to Craigslist and just get after it.
Wow.
And comes clean with these guys. And So now, and of course, these guys, they're not throwing stones at him. They actually were really compassionate, and they also weren't slapping him on the back going, hey, what's your score? You know?
Right.
Like it's not that. They really felt decent compassion. And so the guy said, hey, I actually feel like I need to tell my wife. And all the guys said, we'll go with you.
Wow.
And they showed up. They were at the house, not in an inappropriate way. It wasn't about showing numbers against it. They were there for the wife.
Right.
They were as much there. It wasn't like they were just supporting him in a show of, it wasn't that. It was done very much. She later said it meant so much that they consoled her. They were there for her.
Wow.
But by being there for her, they were there for them.
Well, and she could see.
Yeah. And it gave him the courage to do what he needed to do. And so they were there for him, but then they were there for her because she needed in that moment something that he, as the husband, wasn't able to give her. And so in a way, they had her back too. And to this day, it's one of the coolest stories because, and I know they all don't turn out that way, but sometimes we need a story to give us hope and to give us inspiration of what it could look like. And they, those couples even joined together into a small group, and they have reunions. That guy ended up moving away, not far from here, but a couple hours away. And they still to this day, every year, have reunions together. And it was one of the really cool, when you talk about prodigal son, it's one thing for the prodigal son to walk back. It's another thing for the friends of the prodigal to walk back with them.
Wow, that's good. Yeah. No, and there are, as we wrap up on this topic of the drift, and that's a pretty good example of a drift. Once again, I think that the thing that hit me, the story of the prodigal son, as you just mentioned, but the fact that the thing to remind yourself of when you're in that, number one, we mentioned to be known and to stop the drift before you go too far. But if you have, as this guy did, you can reroute, repent, respond, and not saying the wife's always going to be there to understand that if this is a case like this, or the husband, but God's always going to be there.
That's it right there.
And that's where you can gain your strength.
Yep, exactly.
It's a good topic. It went some ways I didn't expect, which I like. We hope it spoke to you, or at least maybe gave you some hope if you are in a drift, and gave you some tools on perhaps how to redirect and take action and get out of it. So as always, we thank you for spending time with us and trusting us for the time that you have, be it in your car or while you're working out or on a walk or whatever. So thanks very much for always tuning in to Vertical Pursuit, and we will see you next time. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.